Have you ever walked into your own home and felt tired before you even sat down? Not because your house was dirty, not because it was small, but because something about it just felt heavy. Most people think they need better storage, bigger closets, or another trip to IKEA. But what if that's not the real problem? What if your home isn't cluttered with things? It's cluttered with unfinished decisions? Here's something psychologists have known for years. Every object asks something from your brain, even if you never touch it. That pile of old papers, the chipped mug in the cabinet, the shopping bag you're saving just in case. None of them are doing anything. But every time your eyes pass over them, your brain quietly asks, should I keep this? Should I deal with this? Should I finally let this go? Those tiny questions add up, day after day, until your home starts draining your attention instead of restoring your energy. One thing I learned from Japanese homes is that they aren't peaceful because they're bigger. They're peaceful because they're incredibly intentional about what they allow to stay. Today, I'll show you 15 things many Japanese homes choose not to keep, things millions of Americans still have in their kitchens, closets, entryways, and even beside their beds. Stay with me until the end, because number 7 may be raising your stress levels every single day without you realizing it. Number 11 keeps many people emotionally tied to the past. And number 15 is surprisingly one of the hardest things to let go of, even though it affects your rest every single night. Then I'll walk you through a simple 5-minute Japanese home reset test you can use today to figure out exactly what should leave your home first. Let's begin. Why Japanese homes feel different. Before we start talking about the 15 things, there's something important to understand. Most people think Japanese homes feel peaceful because they're small, neat, or beautifully designed. I don't think that's the real reason. The real difference isn't the furniture. It isn't the storage system. It's the mindset. Japanese minimalism isn't about owning as little as possible. It's about letting go of anything that no longer serves the life you're living today. There's a simple idea called danshari. It encourages you to stop bringing unnecessary things into your life. Let go of what no longer serves you, and free yourself from becoming emotionally attached to possessions. Another idea is matanai. It's a reminder to appreciate what you own and use it well, not to keep things forever simply because throwing them away feels wasteful. And then there's ma. In Japanese culture, empty space isn't considered wasted space. It's space that allows your mind to breathe. When you understand these ideas, something changes. This isn't really a video about cleaning your house. It's about removing the quiet distractions that steal a little bit of your attention every single day. So as we go through these 15 items, don't ask yourself, should I throw this away? Instead ask, is this still serving the life I'm living today? That one question changes everything. Let's start in the kitchen. Take a slow look inside your cabinet, not the front shelf. Look all the way in the back. I have a feeling you'll find one. Maybe it's a coffee mug with a chipped rim. Maybe it's a plate with a tiny crack running across the edge. Or maybe it's a bowl you've owned for so many years, and you barely notice the damage anymore. It still works. It still holds your morning coffee. It still serves dinner. So, why get rid of it? That's exactly how most of us think. We keep it because we've gotten used to it. Sometimes because it reminds us of good memories. Sometimes because throwing it away feels wasteful. And sometimes because replacing it simply isn't a priority. But here's something I noticed after learning more about how many Japanese families organize their homes. The goal isn't to own perfect things. The goal is to surround yourself with things that still support your life today. A cracked dish already finished its job. It served hundreds of meals, maybe thousands. Keeping it doesn't honor it. It simply delays a decision you've already made in your heart. Psychologists even have a name for this. It's called the endowment effect. Once something belongs to us, our brains naturally convince us it's more valuable than it really is. That's why throwing away a chipped mug feels surprisingly difficult, even though you'd never buy that same mug if it already looked that way in a store. So, here's something simple. When this video is over, find just one broken dish. Only one. Thank it for the years it served you. Then let it go. You might be surprised how something so small can make your kitchen feel just a little lighter. Now, stay in the kitchen. This time, open your pantry or take a look inside your refrigerator door. Don't just glance at the front. Look behind everything else. I almost guarantee you'll find something hiding back there. A spice you bought for one recipe years ago, half a bottle of sauce you've completely forgotten about, or a seasoning that's been expired for so long you can't even remember when you bought it. We've all done it. We tell ourselves, I might use it someday. The funny thing is, someday rarely shows up. In many Japanese kitchens, freshness isn't only about better flavor. It's about creating a space that feels alive every time you walk into it. Old spices, expired sauces, forgotten jars. They don't just take up shelf space, they quietly take up mental space too. Every extra bottle asks your brain another tiny question. Should I keep this? Is it still good? Will I ever use it? One question isn't a problem, but dozens of little questions every single day become something psychologists call choice overload. The more unnecessary choices your brain has to sort through, the more tired your mind becomes before you've even started cooking dinner. So here's today's challenge. Open your spice cabinet. Find one expired spice. Just one. Throw it away. Tomorrow, you probably won't remember what was inside that bottle, but you'll definitely notice the extra space. And sometimes, that's exactly where a calmer home begins. Broken dishes. Why do we hang on to broken dishes? Honestly, because they still work. That chipped mug still holds your coffee. That cracked plate still carries your dinner. So your brain says, why replace something that isn't completely broken? Sometimes it's habit. You've reached for that same mug every morning for years. Sometimes it's the memory attached to it. Maybe someone gave it to you. Maybe you've had it since your kids were little. And sometimes it's something even simpler. You just don't want to waste money replacing something that still seems usable. I've done the same thing. Most of us have. Expired spices. So why do we keep expired spices? Usually because we believe we'll use them one day. You buy paprika for one recipe or turmeric for a meal you wanted to try. Then life gets busy. Weeks become months. Months become years. Every time you see that jar, you think, I'll use it eventually. You don't keep it because you need it. You keep it because throwing it away feels like admitting you wasted money, or maybe wasted good intentions. That's a feeling almost everyone understands. Shopping bags. Now let's talk about those shopping bags. You know the ones, the nice paper bags, the sturdy boxes, the fancy packaging you carefully folded and tucked away. Why do we keep them? Because they feel valuable, not because of the paper, but because of the memory attached to it. Maybe it reminds you of a vacation, a birthday, a promotion, or simply the day you finally bought something you'd wanted for years. So instead of throwing away the bag, you keep the feeling, without even realizing it. Hotel, toiletries. And then there are the little hotel bottles. Almost everyone has a drawer full of them. Tiny shampoo bottles, mini soaps, travel-size lotion. Why do we keep them? Because they're free. Because they're small. Because we tell ourselves, I'll take these on my next trip. Or, these might come in handy someday. The funny thing is that someday keeps getting pushed further and further away. So those little bottles just sit there, waiting for a trip that may never happen in many Japanese homes. There's a quiet understanding that everyday objects should continue supporting your daily life, not simply taking up space because they've always been there. A chipped mug isn't seen as a failure. It simply means it has finished doing what it was meant to do. Instead of holding on to it out of habit, many people choose to thank it for its years of service and make room for something that reflects the life they're living today. It's less about perfection and more about knowing when something has already given you everything it could. Broken dishes. There's actually a reason this feels so hard. Psychologists call it the endowment effect. The moment something becomes ours, our brain quietly starts believing it's worth more than it really is. That's why a chipped mug you've owned for 10 years can feel more valuable than a brand new one sitting on a store shelf. The object didn't become more valuable. Your attachment to it did. Expired spices. Something else is happening here. Every old jar asks your brain one tiny question. Should I keep it? Will I use it? Is it still good? One question doesn't matter, but dozens of little questions every single day create what's known as choice overload. The more unnecessary choices your brain has to sort through, the more mentally tired you feel without even realizing why. Shopping bags. Behavioral economists have another name for this. It's called the sunk cost fallacy. Once we've spent money on something, our brain wants to hold on to every part of that purchase, even the empty bag, even the box. It feels like throwing them away somehow erases the value of what we bought, but it doesn't. The memory stays, even after the packaging is gone. Hotel toiletries. These little bottles seem harmless, but every time you see them, your brain quietly postpones another decision. Use it, store it, throw it away. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. It's not one bottle that drains your energy. It's hundreds of tiny decisions your brain keeps carrying from one day to the next. Here's a simple place to start. Don't clean the whole kitchen today. Just find one chipped mug or one cracked plate that you know you'll never miss. Thank it for the meals it shared with you, then let it go. One small decision today can make tomorrow's kitchen feel just a little lighter. Hidden stress objects, clothes that no longer fit. Let's open the closet for a moment. Not to organize it, just to look. I think almost everyone has at least one piece of clothing hanging there, waiting for a different version of themselves. Maybe it's the jeans you'll wear when you lose 20 pounds. Maybe it's the jacket from 10 years ago, or the dress that almost fits. We tell ourselves we're being optimistic, but sometimes those clothes quietly remind us of someone we're not anymore, or someone we haven't become yet. In many Japanese homes, clothing isn't expected to represent who you hope to be someday. It's meant to support the person you are today. There's something psychologists call self-discrepancy. The bigger the gap between who we are and who we think we should be, the more stress we quietly carry. Behavioral economists often point out that people tend to hold on to possessions because they represent an imagined future rather than present reality. Maybe that future will come, maybe it won't. But today, those clothes are asking your heart to wait. Here's a simple question. If these clothes fit perfectly today, would you actually wear them? If the answer is no, they've probably already finished their job. Paper piles. Now look around your kitchen counter. your desk, maybe the dining table. Is there a stack of paper sitting there? Bills, mail, receipts, instruction manuals. Nothing urgent. But somehow, it never disappears. The strange thing is, those papers aren't demanding your attention. Your brain is giving it to them. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect. Our minds naturally keep unfinished tasks active in the background. Every time your eyes land on that pile, your brain quietly whispers, "Don't forget, you still need to deal with this." Behavioral economists often describe clutter like this as a hidden mental cost, not because the paper matters, because your attention does. In many Japanese homes, paper rarely stays visible unless it's being used today. Everything else has a place, not because people are obsessed with organizing, but because a calm room asks less from your mind. The cable drawer. Now let's talk about that one drawer. You know exactly which one I mean. Old phone chargers, random cables, headphones from devices you don't even own anymore. Most of us keep them for one reason. What if I need it someday? That sentence sounds practical, but sometimes it's really fear wearing the mask of practicality. Fear of not being prepared. Fear of throwing away something that might become useful. Behavioral economists have noticed that people often overestimate the value of things they'll probably never use again, not because the items are valuable, because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. In many Japanese homes, storage isn't meant to protect every possible future. It's meant to make today's life easier. Sometimes, letting go of one cable is really letting go of one unnecessary worry. Unread books. Finally, let's look at the books beside your bed. Not the ones you're reading, the ones you've been meaning to read, maybe for months, maybe for years. Books are wonderful. They open doors, they change lives, but sometimes that stack isn't really a reading list anymore. It's a list of expectations. Psychologists sometimes call this identity pressure. Without realizing it, we begin collecting evidence of the person we hope to become. More disciplined, more productive, more knowledgeable. Behavioral economists have found that people often buy for their future self while forgetting to take care of the person they are today. In many Japanese homes, one book is enough. One book being fully enjoyed is worth far more than 10 books waiting to make you feel guilty. Reading should feel like a gift, not another unfinished task. Objects keeping you in the past. Souvenirs you don't even like. Let's start with something that looks completely harmless. A little souvenir on a shelf. A mug from a vacation. A small gift someone brought back for you years ago. Maybe you don't even like it, but every time you think about getting rid of it, you feel guilty. In many Japanese homes, an object doesn't have to stay forever just because someone gave it to you. The kindness has already been received. The purpose has already been fulfilled. Sometimes we confuse gratitude with obligation. They're not the same thing. Here's a question I've had to ask myself more than once. Are you keeping the object, or the version of yourself who felt responsible for everyone else's feelings? Because every time you see that souvenir, it quietly reinforces an older version of you. Not who you are today, just who you used to be. Relationship, relics. Now this one is harder. Old letters, an ex's sweatshirt, photos tucked into a drawer, jewelry you haven't worn in years. We tell ourselves, they're just memories. And, in one sense, that's true. The problem isn't the object. It's what the object quietly asks your heart to revisit. In many Japanese homes, making space isn't only about the room. It's also about making space for the next season of your life. Here's the question that changed the way I looked at my own closet. Are you keeping this object? Or are you keeping the person you were when that relationship existed? Because every glance at it can gently pull your mind backward, not dramatically, just quietly, again and again, old identity. Sometimes the hardest things to let go of aren't tied to another person. They're tied to who we used to think we were. The business suit from a career that ended years ago. The sports trophy that's been collecting dust. The hobby equipment you haven't touched in a decade. There's nothing wrong with remembering where you've been, but there comes a point when those things stop honoring your past and start quietly asking you to live in it. In many Japanese homes, objects are expected to support the life you're living now, not the life that ended years ago. So ask yourself one more question. Does this belong in my present? Or is it only protecting a version of me that no longer exists? Sometimes growth doesn't begin when you buy something new. Sometimes it begins when you finally stop introducing yourself through yesterday. A friend of mine kept an old jacket for almost 15 years. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't even in good condition. But it reminded her of a chapter she wasn't ready to leave behind. One Saturday morning, she finally donated it. She told me later, "I thought I'd miss the jacket. Instead, I realized I'd been carrying the weight of that old chapter all along." Sometimes the space you create in your closet becomes space you finally feel in your heart. Objects that interrupt rest. Work materials near the bed. Let's walk into the bedroom. Not because it's messy, because it might be sending your brain the wrong message. A laptop on the nightstand. A notebook beside your pillow. A stack of work folders on the floor. Maybe even a pair of dumbbells waiting for tomorrow morning. We tell ourselves, it's convenient. And maybe it is. But convenience has a hidden cost. In many Japanese homes, the bedroom is treated differently from the rest of the house. It's meant to be associated with rest, not responsibility. Neuroscientists have found that our brains build strong associations with places. The more often you work where you sleep, the harder it becomes for your mind to completely switch off. That's called context-dependent memory. Your bedroom stops saying, "It's time to rest." Instead, it quietly whispers, "Don't forget tomorrow's work." If you want deeper sleep, let your bedroom become just one thing again. A place where your mind knows it's finally safe to relax. Your phone. Now let's talk about the one thing almost all of us bring to bed. Our phone. We tell ourselves we're only checking the weather, or reading one message, or watching one short video, then somehow 40 minutes disappear. The problem isn't just the screen, it's the habit your brain has learned. One notification leads to another. One swipe becomes 10. Psychologists call this a habit loop. The cue is the phone, the routine is scrolling, the reward is a tiny burst of novelty. Your brain keeps asking for one more. In many Japanese homes, many people choose to leave their phones outside the sleeping area whenever possible. Not because phones are bad, because good sleep begins long before your eyes close. Sometimes the healthiest bedtime routine starts with putting one object in another room. Unread books beside the bed. Books are different. They usually represent something good, learning, growth, curiosity. But look at the stack beside your bed. Are those books bringing you peace, or quietly reminding you of everything you haven't gotten around to yet? There's a difference. One book you're enjoying feels relaxing. 10 unfinished books can feel like 10 silent promises. In many Japanese homes, simplicity often means letting one meaningful thing have your full attention, not 5 things competing for it. Your bedroom shouldn't remind you of everything left to accomplish. It should remind you that today is finally over. Decorative pillows, and finally, something that surprises a lot of people: decorative pillows. There's nothing wrong with making a bedroom beautiful. The question is, who is it beautiful for? If every night begins with moving 6 pillows onto a chair, and every morning starts by putting them back again, they've quietly become another task. In many Japanese homes, beauty and usefulness usually work together. The room feels peaceful because almost everything has a purpose. Rest becomes easier when your space asks less of you. Sometimes comfort isn't about adding more. It's about removing one more thing your brain has to manage before it can finally settle down: the invisible cost of stuff. By now, you may have noticed something. This isn't really about dishes, or old cables, or shopping bags. It's about something much easier to miss. Every single thing we own keeps asking something from us. Some things ask for a place to sit. Some ask to be cleaned. Some quietly ask for our attention every time we walk past them. Others ask us to make the same decision over and over again. Should I keep this? Will I ever use it? Maybe someday. And then there are the objects that ask for something even more personal. They ask us to carry an old memory, an old disappointment, or an older version of ourselves. When you really think about it, almost everything we own has 5 hidden costs. First, it takes up space. Then, it needs to be cleaned. After that, it asks for your attention. Sooner or later, it asks you to make another decision. And sometimes, it quietly asks you to carry an emotion you thought you'd already left behind. None of those costs show up on a price tag, but we pay them anyway, day after day, without even noticing. That's why I've come to believe something simple. Free things are often the most expensive things to keep. Not because they cost money, but because they keep charging your time, your attention, and a little piece of your peace every single day. Maybe that's one of the quiet lessons many Japanese homes have been teaching all along. Owning less isn't the goal. Protecting your attention is. The Japanese home reset test. Before you finish watching, I'd like to leave you with something simple. Not another rule. Not another organizing method. Just 5 quiet questions I've started asking myself whenever I pick up something I haven't used in a while. You don't have to answer them perfectly. Just answer them honestly. First, have I actually used this in the past year? Not because I might. Not because I should. Because I truly did. Second, if I didn't already own it, would I buy it again today? That question has surprised me more times than I can count. Sometimes the answer is an immediate no, and that's incredibly freeing. Third, does this still fit the life I'm living today? Not the life I had 5 years ago. Not the life I'm hoping to have someday. The life I wake up to every morning. Fourth, if I really needed this again, could I replace it without much difficulty or expense? We often protect things just because replacing them feels uncertain, but many of those things are easier to replace than the piece they take away. And finally, is this object worth the space it occupies? Not just on a shelf, but in my home, my attention, and my mind. Because every object asks for a little of all 3. Once you've answered those 5 questions, the next step becomes much simpler. If it still serves your life, keep it. If someone else could benefit from it more, donate it. If it's broken but truly worth saving, repair it. If it has reached the end of its life, recycle it responsibly. And if you're honestly unsure, don't force the decision. Place it in a temporary box. Put today's date on it. If months pass and you never think about it, you've probably already found your answer. A peaceful home isn't built in one weekend. It's built one honest decision at a time. How to keep clutter from coming back. Here's something I learned the hard way. Getting rid of clutter isn't actually the difficult part. Keeping it from coming back is. I've gone through weekends where I cleaned every room in the house. For a few days, everything felt calm. Then little by little, the clutter found its way back. A shopping bag here, a package on the counter, a drawer that slowly filled up again. That's when I realized something. A peaceful home isn't created by one big cleanup. It's protected by small daily habits. One habit you'll often hear about in simple Japanese living is this. When one thing comes in, one thing goes out. Buy a new sweater, choose one you no longer wear, and let it go. Bring home a new coffee mug, pass along one that's been sitting in the cabinet for years. Your home doesn't have to keep getting bigger. Sometimes your habits just need better boundaries. Another rule that's helped me is the 30-day rule. When I see something I want to buy, I don't tell myself no. I simply wait. If I still think about it 30 days later, and I know it will genuinely improve my daily life, then I buy it. Most of the time, I forget about it completely. That little pause has probably saved me hundreds of purchases I never really needed. There's one more habit that quietly changes everything. Every object should have one home. Not two, not three, one. When something has a clear place to return to, cleaning becomes almost effortless. You're no longer deciding where it belongs every single time. You're simply putting it back. And here's one mistake I think many of us make. We buy more storage bins, more baskets, more shelves. We think we're solving the clutter, but often we're just building a bigger home for it. In many Japanese homes, people usually reduce what they own before they buy another storage box, because storage isn't the solution. It's only useful after you've decided what truly deserves to stay. At the end of the day, a peaceful home isn't about having perfect organization. It's about making fewer decisions, owning fewer distractions, and giving yourself a little more room to breathe. The 7-day Japanese Home Challenge. Before we finish, I'd like to invite you to try something. Not a 30-day challenge, not a complete home makeover, just 7 small days, one space at a time. You don't have to finish your whole house. You just have to keep showing up. Here's how I do it. Day 1, the kitchen. Open one cabinet. Throw away expired food. Recycle one old container. Let your kitchen breathe again. Day 2, your closet. Choose 5 pieces of clothing. Keep the ones that truly fit your life today. Let go of the ones you're holding on to out of guilt or hope or habit. Day 3, the bathroom. Empty one drawer. Get rid of old makeup, expired medicine, hotel toiletries you've been saving for years. If you haven't used them by now, they've probably already served their purpose. Day 4, the living room. Look around with fresh eyes. Notice what you've stopped seeing. Old magazines, random decorations, cords that no longer belong to anything. Ask yourself, would I notice if this disappeared tomorrow? If the answer is no, maybe it's time. Day 5, the entryway. The entrance to your home quietly sets the tone for everything that follows. Clear away shoes you never wear. Old umbrellas, empty boxes, shopping bags waiting for someday. Give yourself the feeling of arriving home instead of arriving at another to-do list. Day 6, the bedroom. Remove just one thing that reminds you of work or stress or unfinished responsibilities. Leave only what helps your mind understand This room is meant for rest. Sometimes, one peaceful corner is enough to change the way a whole room feels. Day 7. The memory box. This may be the hardest day. Take out a few objects you've been keeping for emotional reasons. You don't have to throw them away. Just hold each one for a moment. Ask yourself, am I keeping this object or the person I used to be? You might discover those aren't always the same thing. By the end of the week, your home may not look dramatically different, but you probably will. Because decluttering isn't really about changing your house. It's about changing your relationship with the things you own. And once that changes, everything else starts to feel a little lighter. If you decide to try this challenge, don't aim for perfection. Just aim for one honest decision each day. Sometimes, that's all it takes to begin creating a home that feels calm again. As we come to the end of this conversation, I hope one thing has become clear. This was never really about dishes, or closets, or paper piles. It wasn't even about decluttering. It was about paying attention to the quiet ways our homes shape our lives. Every object around us asks for something. A little space, a little time, a little attention, sometimes, even a little piece of our heart. And most of us never notice those small costs because they don't arrive all at once. They arrive one decision, one drawer, one forgotten shelf at a time. One of the things I admire most about many Japanese homes isn't that they look perfect. It's that they often feel intentional. There's a quiet sense that the things inside the home have earned their place, not because they're expensive, not because they've always been there, but because they still support the life being lived today. Maybe that's the question we can all carry with us after this video, not, how much should I own? But, does what I own still support the life I want to live? Because life changes. We change. Our homes should be allowed to change with us. So, if you decide to clear one shelf this week, or donate one box, or simply let go of one thing you've been carrying for years, don't think of it as losing something. Think of it as making room. Room for peace. Room for clarity. Room for the next chapter of your life. Because in the end, the goal isn't to own less. The goal is to make room for the life you're living now. And sometimes that new life begins with letting go of just one thing. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope your home feels a little lighter, and your heart does too. Before you click on another video, I'd like to ask you for one small favor. Not for me, for yourself. When this video ends, don't try to organize your whole house. Don't make a giant weekend project out of it. Just look around the room you're sitting in right now. Find one object you've been avoiding. Maybe it's been sitting there for months, maybe for years. Maybe every time you see it, you quietly tell yourself, I'll deal with that later. Today, don't wait for later. Pick it up. Decide what it deserves. Keep it, donate it, repair it, recycle it, or finally let it go. Then come back here and tell us what it was. You don't have to write a long story. Just one sentence is enough. You might be surprised how many people are carrying the very same thing. And who knows, your comment might be the reason someone else finally takes that first small step too. If this video gave you a new way of looking at your home, I'd love to have you join us again. Here on Inside Japanese Living, we explore the quiet habits, timeless ideas, and everyday practices that help make life a little calmer, one small step at a time. Until next time, take good care of yourself and take good care of the space that takes care of you.